Dear Great-Grandmother Byrne, I have to admit that it seems strange to call you that. In my mind, when I think of you, and that's often these days, I call you by your maiden name, Anne Dormady. Why do I think of you at all? Why do I feel a connection to a woman who was dead 30 years before I was born? Surely it can't be merely because I was named after you. You see, my name is Anne too. Isn't that funny? 30 years after you died, a little girl was named after you. And you might be interested to know I'm not the first. Did you know that there are at least 2 other Annes named in your memory? Anyway, neither do I feel a connection just because I've seen so many pictures of you. I haven't. In fact, I've only seen one, and in it, you're standing with your husband, James. I have to tell you, Anne, you don't take a good picture. You look pretty severe. How long did the photographer make you stand still for that picture? 2 minutes? 3? No wonder you're not smiling. But you could have tried. I wonder sometimes if the reason that I'm drawn to you might be that I think you might be a little more like me, or rather, that I might be a little bit like you. I chose not to marry, but to remain single and express my love for God and God's people as a dedicated single school teacher, youth minister, and then catechist. I know, you were married and the mother of 3 girls, but you didn't get married until you were 39, so I think it's fair that I look to you as a bit of a role model. The other thing that we have in common is what you did before you were married. For 24 years, from the time you were 16 until you married, you were the housekeeper for a priest. First in Argentia, your hometown, and then you accompanied a young and dynamic new priest, Michael Morris, on his 2 great adventures of establishing a parish based on an island called O'Darin in the middle of Placentia Bay, and later establishing an orphanage and school for boys at Villanova near St. John's. No, I'm not a priest's housekeeper. God help the man I tried to cook and clean for. He'd starve or turn into a rabbit with all the vegetables I eat. He might have to hunt down the dust bunnies with a rifle. But I'm a catechist. I help people explore their faith, grow in their faith, and find meaning in their lives. I help people connect their personal stories with God's dream for them. Sometimes I like to say that I help people discover more about who they are and whose they are. And from what I hear about you, if you were alive today, you might be doing what I'm doing. It's just that the same possibilities weren't there for you as for me. I've heard that when the priest was out and ministering to his widespread flock in St. Joseph's, Marystown, Buren, Rochun, Parker's Cove, you held down the fort on O'Darin Island. You counseled troubled people. You gathered the people for prayer. You baptized babies in case of emergency. Now, O'Darin is not far by boat from Argentia, where your home and family were, and you probably got home fairly often. But after 10 years, you experienced a huge change. You were such a competent member of the parish team in O'Darin that when Father Morris was called to his next assignment, starting an orphanage for boys, he asked you to move with him, and you went. Far from home this time, and far from family and all those you held dear. I followed in your footsteps there too, Anne Dormady. I have wandered many places trying to follow my God faithfully as you did. And for 6 years, you labored alongside Father Morris until you married my great-grandfather. In those days, married women were prohibited from working outside the home. 4 months after you left your position at the orphanage, some of the boys drank stagnant water and contracted typhus. 4 of them died, and so did Father Morris, nursing them. They say that you took that to your grave, certain that had you been at the helm, these precious young lives and that dedicated priest would not have been lost. I think that I'm a bit like you there as well, Anne. I take the people with and among whom I minister close to my heart. I mother them. I try to nurture them, and nothing makes me happier than to see them succeed and thrive. I grieve when they suffer loss. Like your love for those boys, I think mine mirrors the love of Jesus, who wept over Jerusalem. How often would I have gathered you as a hen gathers her chicks? I guess, Anne, what I want most to say to you is thank you. You are one of those in the communion of saints to whom I look up. If you had not been so faithful and so excellent in your role in the 1870s and 1880s, perhaps I and other women in today's church would not have had the roads open to me that I have followed. Help me to remember that when I'm tempted to discouragement or to thinking that my little efforts are insignificant. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, verses 10 to 31, there's a passage that I think reflects who you were and are. I dedicate it to you now as I recall you in grateful prayer. A capable wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. She makes linen garments and sells them. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her happy, her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Someday, Anne Dormady, I hope to meet you in heaven. Until then, pray for us, that we will continue in the long line of faithfulness of which you are a part.